I tell prospective students that urbanism is for them if they're interested in the way cities are put together.
As cities and population keep growing, so does the demand for dwelling and public spaces and services. As this growing effect keeps its pace in a finite world, urbanism must react consciously and effectively as a catalyzer between needs and future developments.
You may want to major in urbanism if you're interested in sinking your teeth into wicked problems. Through design and research by design, you'll explore questions and provocations that underpin how we think about, how we study, how we become, challenge and probe the lives of our cities. And importantly, I think, you'll do so by looking relationally at the associated ecologies of the built environment. So to issues of equity, climate, spatial justice, the non-human, infrastructure, and so much more.
Why do students consider an urbanism major? I think you can ask yourself a series of questions. Do I love cities? Am I curious about the world? Do I want to imagine a better future?
And if you're interested in the impact of the structure of the built environment on the quality of our lives, and on the impact that each of us individually and that we collectively make on the environment. Effectively, the studio is a crash course in the rules of engagement of urban design. What are the key issues? How do we deal with them? And what do we as designers contribute to that whole discussion?
They're engaging the built environment at a range of scales, from the scale of a building or a neighborhood to that of a whole region or watershed. And also the ability to think analytically, to think critically, about a diverse range of important contemporary issues.
Through large portions of history, only a small percentage of people lived in cities. Over the course of the 20th century, that has expanded exponentially. We're up to, I think, about 50%. There will be extremely large cities created over the next few decades that don't even exist at all. The world is increasingly urban. And cities are our future.
Carleton University's campus is in Ottawa, Canada's capital city. And our school is located between the Rideau Canal and the Rideau River on what is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. Our location is important. It's important because it ties us to Canada's past and to Canada's future, and also to the potential for more equitable and environmental and socially just urban design and urban thinking.
So the urbanism curriculum has been designed both to dovetail with and to differ in significant ways from the curricula of the other BAS majors. In the first year of the program, design students, urbanism students, and conservation students are all together in a series of foundational courses. It's in the second year that the curricula begin to diverge. Urbanism students take their first dedicated urbanism studio in the fall term of their second year, and that's the Fundamentals of Urbanism studio. In this studio, we run through a variety of the building types that comprise cities. We look at how these buildings relate to each other and to streets and to blocks, how they come together to form neighborhoods, and how they work together with the transportation networks that are so key in organizing cities. As they move into their third year, urbanism students take two studios. In the fall, they take design in the core, and in the winter, they take a studio called Urbanism on the Periphery. The first studio really looks at the redevelopment and intensification, if you will, of existing urban areas which are already urbanized. It looks at how we can add density and how we facilitate the transformation of existing neighborhoods, existing portions of the city as the city grows and transforms. The second studio, Urbanism on the Periphery, really looks at the outward expansion of cities. So this can be anything from greenfield design, designing on laying out cities on areas that have never been urbanized or been developed. Or it can be looking at, for instance, comparative ways that cities grow, looking at relations to topography, watershed, a whole variety of kind of regional influences that will determine how and why cities grow.
This image is from a third-year project that I worked on called Power, Pulp, Paper, and Print, which was a sort of redevelopment of an industrial site in Gatineau, Quebec, in the Hull neighborhood. And it looked at reinterpreting a current and historic industrial site into a new and thriving artist and maker space.
Students in the urbanism major take most of their coursework within architectural studies. Some of those are seminars and studios that are designed specifically for them, for the urbanism cohort. Others are courses that they take with architecture and conservation students. Urbanism students also will be taking geography courses in human geography and urban sociology. What's very unique about urbanism is that it's a major that combines a number of topics and approaches. Those approaches range from reading and critical thinking and writing to design and creative visualization. So students may be working with documentations and imaginations that involve drawing, physical modeling, 3D modeling, video making, and other creative design techniques. Most of our urbanism courses also have a registration for seminars and studios that range between 10 and 18 students. So students really get to know each other well, and they get to know faculty well. And both design studios and seminars where they develop these critical thinking skills are environments where they can have their questions answered, and they can really develop their unique perspective that comes from their own type of intelligence.
In the fall term of the fourth year, the three majors come back together. So the design, urbanism, and conservation students all come together in the housing studio. This studio is what we call the comprehensive studio, and really deals with design at a whole variety of different scales. So students start by master planning a relatively large site, and then each student chooses a building to develop at the building scale, and then ultimately takes it all the way down to the design of individual building components at a more detailed scale. The housing studio is of particular interest to urbanism students in as much as housing accounts for such a large proportion of what we call urban fabric. And so the way we build housing, the density at which we build housing, where we organize housing, will largely determine how our cities are organized. If we do it efficiently, if we do it smartly, we can create efficient and smart cities that support all kinds of activities: economic, social, cultural, and indeed environmentally conscious activity.
Professor Catherine Bonier and I have been really fortunate to co-direct the Carleton Urban Research Lab, which focuses on the linked issues of water, cities, and equity. And the lab has employed a number of grad and undergrad students as research fellows on a variety of topics, including developing resource toolkits for students, hosting public symposia, and working at present actually on a multidisciplinary collaborative grant on gendered design projects in Latin America, Africa, and Asia with colleagues from around the university.
We've also been able to reach out and to bring in researchers and students from other urban design and architecture programs around the world. We hosted the Summer City Symposium and will host more such events in future. This allowed us to bring in international speakers and to host a group of students from Bangalore, India, along with their faculty mentors. We were able to run a short design workshop that teamed up Carleton students with students from Bangalore's SJB School of Architecture and Planning. And together they looked at issues around the waterfront and islands between Quebec and Ontario, Gatineau and Ottawa.
The final studio for the urbanism program is in the winter term of the fourth year, and this is called Urbanism in the Global Context. Here we step out of the Canadian, or if you will, even the Western context, and look at urban development in other parts of the world. The Global South, Asia, Africa. This studio engages a project which is outside of Canada at a location to which students travel over the winter break.
In the studio, we use critical and conceptual mapping to explore and probe large-scale urban systems in the city. We look at larger, and hyper-large scales of social, spatial, and critical infrastructure. We map drawing on both the agency of mapping, as James Corner talks about, as well as the unsettling possibilities of mapping, like the work of Anuradha Mathur and Dilip Dakuna, as a way really to explore generous, equitable, and speculative urban futures for the city. Mapping, I think, it allows us to see opportunities and to productively unsee staid conventions about the city. We also, of course, traveled to Istanbul wonderfully, the city of the world's desire, and we spent some time in this incredible city, meeting with local architects, designers, landscape architects, community members, and encountering the city's absolutely incredible architectural, urban, social, cultural, and culinary histories too.
Another benefit to being in the national capital is that we are able to bring in people from governmental agencies, local developers, parks management, transportation engineers, community members. And they're able to either advise students on projects or come to reviews where students pin up designs and they get feedback from people who are involved in real projects of importance to the future of cities.
Standing next to your panels during critiques, it's a scary, nerve-wracking experience, but it's just so exciting and exhilarating to be next to your printed copy of work that you've worked on all semester, and you could say your design confidently because you've been working on it all semester, and as well as just being in the crowds of watching your friends and watch that is just a really good feeling.
With the architecture building, you get like a lot of informal activities taking place at all times of day, like eating, sleeping, people hanging out, playing music, and it feels a lot less like a formal place of study and more like a place where you can hang out but also get work done.
I think that those who are willing to question the fundamental conventions that have detrimentally affected the built and natural environments should definitely consider applying. Powerful and sensitive voices are both valid and complementary in order to tackle down effectively the origin of those problems that have established systematic ways of conceiving how cities and its citizens should live.
Our students have a lot of choices and a lot of opportunity. A fair number of urbanism majors go on to pursue a graduate degree in architecture, but a large number choose instead to pursue a graduate degree in landscape architecture or in urban design. Our undergraduate urbanism program is truly unique in that it provides our students with a highly relevant focus, strong design skills, and also the ability to think analytically, to think critically about a diverse range of important contemporary issues.
I chose the urbanism program at Carleton because it encompassed a lot of things that I really enjoy and love learning about, which include geography, architecture, Canadian history, as well as just the planning and design of urban spaces.
In my urbanism degree, I learned a lot of useful topics that I will always remember after I graduate. Topics that include access to job opportunities, whether that be transportation, education, inequality of education, gender inequality of how cities are made, as well as discrimination with topics such as NIMBY and gentrification, which are prevalent today, and you could still see it within design.
The thing that I like most about the Carleton Urbanism program would have to be the way that the teaching staff allows students to experiment with ideas, and they often take the approach that there is no right or wrong answer.
I was a lot more interested in the broader scale, just designing for the public rather than for a smaller group of people.
Allows you to get a different perspective on architecture, looking at a broader context. We were able to break away into smaller class sizes and get more of a one-on-one class experience with the professors.
As it aligns with my philosophy on architecture, that is a component of a larger system, that architecture is to be designed according to its surrounding conditions.
Integration of human geography into the course load.
Seeing how we can use our current digital tools to build more resilient and sustainable cities.
Urbanism matters because the built environment transforms into being the background of our life. From the places we choose to live to the ways we choose to travel, all work together to tell the story of our lives.
Travel is an absolutely essential part of what we do and how we engage urbanism, in as much as the best way to understand cities is to actually go into and experience them.
My favorite memory from the urbanism program is our directed study abroad. Each year, students are given the opportunity to travel abroad with their professor and their studio mates, and my year we were given the opportunity to go to Chile. This was an amazing experience full of so much culture, natural landscapes, and amazing adventures, and I'll never forget it.
Directed studies abroad helps our students to consider Canadian cities in the wider context, in connection with other cities around the world, but also in relation to rural, agricultural, and resource-producing landscapes. Professor Gianni and I have guided our own students on travels to North India, to Ahmedabad, New Delhi, Agra, Chandigarh, and Kausali.
We also got to meet students from Bangalore while we were there, as our professors had a connection, and so they came up, and it was really interesting getting to talk to students who were also studying architecture but in a different country. It's a really unique time as a student and a young adult, getting to know people from around the world.
We've also been able to host students coming from Bangalore, India. In 2018, as part of the Carleton Urban Research Lab Summer Cities event, we were able to host students from the event's co-sponsoring institution, the SJB School of Architecture and Planning in Bangalore. We guided students on a tour that went from Ottawa to Montreal and Toronto, around Lake Ontario, and then from Niagara Falls, seeing students on their way towards New York City and beyond.
This year's Urbanism DSA was a trip to the Atacama Desert in Chile, which is a over 100,000 square kilometer desert in the north of Chile, which is very arid, dry, very hot heats. We all got a bit sunburnt, but got to explore a really incredible landscape that almost none of us have had the experience to learn in or about. And getting the chance to explore the different areas, talk to different people, and learn how placemaking and design really works in a completely different environment than what we're used to.
Back in 2018, we went to Istanbul, and let me tell you, Istanbul is a fantastic city. It is so beautiful, and it's very unique topographically, as there's lots of cities, but also it's split geographically between two continents. You have your Asia continent as well as your European continent. So it's very unique, as you get to traverse the whole city as not only on roads by car or train, but you also get to see it from the water as you ferry across.
It's a place where one of the most important lessons that separate urban design from architecture can really be seen. That the design of urban is all about managing growth, dealing with contingency, and negotiating the complexities of competing ideas.
Apart from having just a great time with your friends and teachers, I think the DSA is important in terms of a growth of an architecture student. So they become aware of all the different perspectives urban planning or architecture can take from, a city across the world that may value something totally different than what we value here.
Obviously, the cities that someone else would be living in, for example, somewhere in Europe or somewhere in Asia, it would be a different lifestyle, different strategies that you would have to put in a city for that climate and could work.
The value proposition of design is really best experienced in person. It's hard enough to understand architecture through images or text alone. It's significantly harder to describe a city. I mean, when we talk about urbanism, it's much more than just inert material. It's the resonance between people, culture, environment, and you can only really get that when you're there in person, and that's what makes the DSA so special.